Good morning, everyone. This is Ed Kranich with the Connecticut Green Bank. Thanks again for joining us for the Residential Solar Investment Program update. We're just waiting for our attendees to file in and everyone to get settled, so we'll be getting started in just a few minutes here. All right, it looks like everyone is just about settled, so we will get started. All right. So now that most of the attendees are on the line, I'll go over the agenda, the staff with us today, and a few other items before we get started. Again, my name is Ed Kranich. I'm the manager of incentive programs with the Connecticut Green Bank, managing the Residential Solar Investment Program. So first, today in the room and virtually, we have Brian Garcia, our president and CEO, the new director of incentive programs, Sergio Carrillo, who will introduce himself, or BG will introduce him on the next slide. We have Celia Price, associate director of incentive programs, Sarah Pine, manager of incentive programs, Matt Masunis, our legislative liaison, Joe Buonanata, manager of the Smarty Loan program. So we are also joined today by the rest of the incentive programs team. I'm sure you're familiar with all of us, and some other staff. So I'm sure we have the capacity to answer any questions that you may have. So for our agenda today, we'll start with a couple of bits on staffing changes. We'll go a little bit more into the impacts of COVID-19, talk about survey results from some surveys that we've put out over the last couple of months. We also have a few survey poll questions for you, so we'll be interactive in the middle of this webinar. And most importantly, we're going to talk about the RSIP status with respect to the 350 megawatt target and our closeout process, assuming that we do not get any type of an extension. After that, we have some Smarty updates with an overview of the new special offer for battery storage, and a little bit more about battery storage incentive program that we're proposing, and a couple other RSIP reminders. So with that, Brian Garcia, make sure that you are unmuted, and I'll pass it over to you. Let me just unmute you. Okay.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Ed. Good morning, everyone. This is Brian Garcia. Ed, why don't we go to the next slide? Let's go to the slide with Sergio's picture on it. Slide 4. Excellent. All right. So I just wanted to catch everybody up on where we are on staffing here at the Green Bank. I'm very excited to introduce our new director of incentive programs. We'll get there in a second, and I'm going to ask Sergio to say a little bit about himself if he's on the line. But let me just kind of work through where we are. Everyone here on the line knows our incredible RSIP team and incentive programs team. We're undergoing a lot of changes as we make various transitions, but I do want to say a little bit about Celia, who you all know has been incredible working with you all over more than the last decade. Celia is in a transitionary process. sometime within the next 3 to 6 months. She's in the process of moving to Michigan. Celia can weigh in there if she like, but she's going to be helping us transition the programs and specifically get Sergio onboarded and ready to go to help support our incentive programs and lead our incentive programs. But we're excited for Sergio to be joining us. He went through a really extensive search process. He comes to us from Delaware, having worked for a utility in the gas and electric businesses, helping support commercial customers address their energy needs. We are really excited to welcome aboard. Actually, today is the first time he's in the office, so we actually have a lot of people here in Rocky Hill today, which is really unusual given COVID-19. But let me turn it to you, Sergio, if you wanted to say a few things, and Celia, feel free if you wanted to say a few things as well. But Sergio, I don't know if you're on the line. You there? All right. So we probably don't have him signed on as a panelist here.
Actually, just a moment, Brian. We can unmute Sergio, so just bear with me a moment.
Cool. We can also unmute Celia if she wants to say a few things.
Yes, and Sergio, I believe you should be able to unmute yourself now. Sorry for the confusion there.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I'm here. Thank you, Brian. And hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As Brian said, my name is Sergio Carrillo. I'm the new director of incentive programs. And wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. For the past 7 years, I worked for Chesapeake Utilities Corporation. It's a natural gas and electric utility. And I was leading their strategy development and execution efforts. Part of that strategy was clean energy technologies, including solar, combined heat and power, CHP, compressed natural gas, CNG, renewable natural gas, RNG, and others. And prior to Chesapeake, I had held different financial roles in energy marketing companies, leading retail electricity pricing for residential, commercial, industrial customers, and also leading wholesale electricity procurement processes in PJM. So that's a little bit about my background. I'm very excited to be working with this exceptional team, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys in the very near future.
Excellent. Thank you, Sergio. Celia, do you want to say anything?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. And I just wanted to say we're really excited to have Sergio here joining the team. So welcome, Sergio. It'll be great to have your experience to contribute to all the work of the incentive programs. And I just wanted to thank everyone in the industry for all the support and the collaborative work that you've been providing, and we hope to continue that and look forward to continuing to provide support during the transition, along with Dale Hedman, who is still also providing support to the team, who was our prior managing director, as well as all the great staff on our team. So thank you.
All right, excellent, thank you. So we wanted to give you all a sense of where we are on staffing, given a number of transitions, but we are ready to continue moving forward. Ed, let's go to the next section, which is the COVID-19 impacts. Perfect, yeah, let's go to the next slide. All right, great. So thank you to many of you who've been involved in taking the surveys that we've done over the course of the last 3 to 6 months, working with the governor's office, Advanced CT, DECD, DEEP, the utilities. We've assembled a number of different surveys to get a sense for how all of you are managing through COVID-19. Based on a number of different data points, it's very clear in conversations with you all that this is a very, very difficult time. The first survey that we had in April, these are two data sets you're seeing. On the left is our earlier one, and on the right is the one from July. And this is data specifically pulled from the residential solar PV market respondents. So the first survey that we did in April, you can see on a detrimental impact scale, how detrimental has COVID-19 been to your business on a scale of 1 to 10. The residential solar market was at 8, roughly on average of 10 sad faces. We also asked the question of how long is it going to take when COVID-19 is under control for your businesses to be able to get back to normal. And you can see there 6 to 12 months. So early days, really, really difficult, still difficult today, but I can tell you that the residential solar PV industry was bad, but there were worse industries. The energy efficiency residential industry was devastated. So they had worse data in the April. Then we redid the survey again in July to kind of see how you all were doing, obviously following the Paycheck Protection Program. Literally nearly 100% of the respondents were able to access the PPP. There was one company on the efficiency side that was unable to access it, but it seems like you all were able to buy yourselves some time and receive some of that federal support through the PPP. We saw that in the responses, but you can also see the detrimental impact. Again, not good, but it's less than what you were experiencing in April. With regards to, how long is it going to take for you to get back to normal once we get COVID-19 under control, you can see that you all are in a better place. Although there is a really concerning data point to us that we didn't see in the first survey, is that some of you will never recover from that. And that is, we want to get a better sense of that. Ed indicated earlier that we're going to be doing some surveying. So just want to get you all thinking about responses here, because we'll get to that in a second. But we want to further understand what this means in the context of the sustainability of your businesses in Connecticut. Let's go to the next slide. So one of the other questions we asked in survey 2 was, since June 1st of 2020, how would you rate customer demand? We wanted to see and understand the demand side of the market for your business. And you can see half of the pie there, customer demand is lower than this time last year and not increasing. We'll share with you a little bit of the data that kind of substantiates that opinion. The other thing is the small greener wedge in the upper left-hand corner. For some of you, customer demand is higher than this time last year. So it may be that maybe you're seeing people wanting to be more sustainable themselves and taking it upon themselves to be more independent. I think if we did this survey today, we might see that even more given the rate increases and the storms. But some of you are experiencing that. Customer demand is equivalent to this time last year, the blue wedge. So some of you are feeling that it is the same. And then lastly, the purple wedge in the bottom there, customer demand is lower than this time last year, but increasing. So this was the survey response from the July survey. Let's go to the next slide. We wanted to share with you kind of some actual data. I'll get into this data in a second. But at a macro level, all of you know what the goals of the residential solar investment program are from a policy perspective. There are really 3 things that the policy speaks to. The first is achieving 350 megawatts of new residential solar PV before December 31st of 2022. Celia is going to give us an update on where we are on that in a minute. The second is for the Green Bank to administer a declining incentive block structure to support this market. And you all have been doing a great job. We've gone from step 1 of having $130 ZREC equivalent price to where we are currently now in the program, which is about a $20 equivalent ZREC price. So we've managed to reduce incentives by 85% over that period of time, while you all are managing through the investment tax credit reduction, while you are managing installed costs and everything that's happening in the market. But there are some concerns that we see as a result of COVID-19. And the third policy goal is the one we're really focused on, and that is that within the RSIP policy is an economic development objective, which is fostering the sustained orderly development of the local solar industry. So this specifically to the Green Bank means we want a vibrant, stable industry to continue providing residential end-use customers with access to new solar PV installations, to you all helping them maintain their existing energy installations. This is the one that worries us because of what COVID-19 has done to the industry. So let me turn from that goals to what you're seeing now here in this graph. So we have a number of different metrics as an organization to help us understand the stability and viability of the local industry in Connecticut. For example, one of them is your diversity. So 75% of your customers are taking a lease or a PPA product. 25% are owning. We had 50 contractors last fiscal year from July 1st of 2019 through June 30th of 2020, installing at least one project, with 16 of those contractors installing over 50 projects or doing at least $2 million in revenue. So that's an important one for us, is the companies that are here delivering revenue and building businesses around supporting this market. There are 7 third-party owners in the market. All of you know them. Sunnova is nearly $100 million market last year. Sunrun and Posigen at $20 million. So there are a number of third-party options, and if you haven't partnered with those options yet, take a look, and we're happy to facilitate. But what you're looking at here is a data point that is directly impactful to you all as an industry. This is RSIP applications that we receive from you. What you're seeing on the x-axis is monthly data going all the way back to January of 2017, not only 2018. The red line there represents 2017 data as well. On the Y1 axis is the megawatt hours of application submissions in those months. And then on the Y2 axis is the megawatt difference from the same month in the prior year. So this to us is a metric of how are you doing this year to what you did the same month last year. And you always want to be above zero, right? And for us, sustained orderly development is continued growth. We want to see investment in Connecticut and deployment in Connecticut. So being above the green line is important. And what you clearly see here is that immediately when COVID-19 hit, we dropped below the line. It looked like we tried to get to the line back in June and July, but then we dropped in August. We'd be interested in hearing from you all what you think happened in August. We all know it's typically a vacation month in New England, but there may be something more. Feel free to text that in or chat that in. But this data to us is, you guys aren't stable. It doesn't feel like things are are ready, especially as we get closer to the 350 megawatt target on the RSIP. So what we've been doing, actually, let's go to the next slide and then I'll talk briefly about what we've been doing before we get to the poll. Great, so this is the second piece of data that again comes from you all, which is when you submit in your completion paperwork for the final piece of the incentive. Again, these are materials that come from you. So again, we see this, to me, where the prior graph is more customer acquisition on the demand side, this is the construction work on the jobs. So this is the important part, because this is where economic development comes into effect, where your businesses are generating revenues, you're hiring people, work is happening. And we see the drop again in August. We saw something good happen in July. You were doing more installations than July of last year, but then it dropped again in August. And you all might say this is just vacation time in New England, and we all, that's what happens. But we'd be interested to hear, what else you think happened in August. But with this data, as we started to track it early on with the surveys and this data, the Green Bank took the position, and we had a conversation with our board of reaching out to the legislature and expressing the need to extend the RSIP. because you'll see shortly from Celia, we're getting close to the 350 megawatt target. And once we hit the target, it's going to be more difficult, if not impossible, for us to continue supporting the industry. So we worked all summer to propose legislation, and I'm sure all of you are out there advocating. So we're trying to get the legislation extended in some sort of special session and undertaking other things, including trying to address it through a regulatory process. All right, let's go to the next slide where we want to start diving into some of your opinions. So since we have you all here, we wanted to get your insights on 3 different questions. All these questions are going to come at you in a poll here shortly, really quickly. So if you can all just work through them, that will be great. That will tell us kind of how things are going. The first part here is this question on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the least and 5 being the most important. How important are the following to the residential solar PV industry in Connecticut? And you're going to get 7 questions. Ed, go ahead and keep it on the other thing. Sorry, the slides. You're going to get 7 questions. You're going to respond to them on the 1 to 5 level, and then go to the next slide, Ed. You're going to get a follow-on question, slide number 2, that's going to say, given the impacts of COVID-19 on the residential solar PV industry in Connecticut, on a scale of 1 to 5, how important is the continuation of the RSIP to the stability of your company's operations in Connecticut? This is a really important question for us because we want to know how important we are to helping your companies navigate through COVID-19. And then the last, 3rd question, Ed, go to the next slide. How would you rate the following barriers to greater customer adoption of residential solar in Connecticut? Please rate 1 to 5. Labor shortages, supply chain issues, economic uncertainty. These things are going to come at you. When I tell Ed right now to start them, I'm going to give you guys 3 to 5 minutes to respond. If you can work through them quickly, that will be great, and then we'll come back to the presentation and webinar here today. All right, Ed, let's go ahead and fire it out.
Okay, we're just over 3/4 of you have voted.
Great. So it sounds like, Ed, they're moving through them pretty quickly. Let's
Yep.
let's let them keep going. Keep going, gang. We realize this is a lot clicking through, but this will be important data for us.
Okay, so I'm going to close the first question and go to the next one. We're at just about 90%. Okay. Now the next question is on the importance of federal trade policy. So we'll try to do this one in 45 seconds.
And Ed, we didn't miss that second question, did we?
No.
Okay.
We're still on the first 7 questions of the first question.
Oh, gotcha.
So it's a total of about 16 questions, 16 polls that will come up. So we're going to try to move quickly.
Yeah, so folks can just quickly respond to these. We're just going to start moving pretty quickly.
Okay, next one, Connecticut net metering.
Excellent. Thank you all. Keep going. Ed, what might help is just give them a sense of the percentage as they're racking it up so we can keep them moving.
Okay. This one is on the Connecticut tariff policy. 30%, 50%. You're all going a lot faster with each question, so we appreciate that. Excellent. Next question. The importance of the residential solar investment program. And we appreciate those of you who say that it's very important.
Don't bias their responses, Ed.
Okay, 85% of you. Next question. Electricity rates.
Great. There's one more after this, and then we'll move to the second question, which is just one response.
Okay, 80% of you. Good. And availability of financing.
Great. After this question, we'll be on question number 2, which just requires one response. Then we'll go to question 3, which has a series of 6 responses. Move the slide back one, Ed, if you could.
Yep.
Perfect. So this is the second question you're going to be answering now. Great. How's the response rate, Ed? Good on that one?
Right. 85%. That seems to be the max for these. So, okay. So,
Okay.
Question 3. So, how would you rate the following barriers to jump ahead to greater customer adoption? So, this first one is for the labor shortage. One being the least important, 5 being the most important. %, 70%.
Excellent.
And okay, next question. Supply chain issues or delays. %.
Great. Keep going, gang. We're almost done. Thank you.
80%. Next question. Economic uncertainty. %, 50%. %. Okay, next question. Uncertainty in availability of the RSIP incentive.
Great. And after this one, there's 2 more. So if you all keep with us, we're almost there.
About 80% of you. Next question. Uncertainty in the availability of the federal ITC. At 50%, 70, 80. Good. And the last part of this question, challenges with virtual sales. At 65%, 80%.
Perfect. Excellent. All right. Everyone, thank you for bearing with us on that. That's going to be really important. It's going to be another data set to help us further understand where all of your respective companies are in managing through COVID and what policymakers and others can do to help support you through that. So we're going to and we'll share the results of these polls probably in the follow-up email that we usually do after these webinars. We'll share these results in that write-up. Let's go ahead and go to the next section, and I'm going to ask Celia if she can start us off on just providing the overview of the RSIP statute. And Celia, I'll trail you on the next couple of slides and just add in my thoughts as you kind of work through them. You might want to unmute Celia. Forgive me.
Thank you. So we just wanted to, on this slide, just make a couple of points about the RSIP statute. So as most of you are aware, RSIP was put into statute in 2011 by Public Act 1180, Section 106, with an original target of 30 megawatts, which we met early and then extended to 300 megawatts in 2015. And most recently, the legislature extended RSIP to 350 megawatts last year through Public Act 19-35. We just wanted to point out that if you look at the language on this slide, the statute actually specifies deployment of 350 megawatts, not just approval of 350 megawatts. So we'll provide an update on the status of the program on the next slide. That will reflect what we need to do to take into consideration approvals versus deployment. An additional reminder that we wanted to mention here is we realized some contractors didn't know what the status of net metering was, and we just wanted to let you know that net metering does not end until December 31, 2021. So it was updated by Public Act 19-35 last year, decoupling the timing of net metering ending and transitioning to the tariff, decoupling that from the end of RSIP. So you may recall that the prior statute, PA 18-50, was going to have net metering end at the same time as RSIP. And thanks to the industry being very vocal about how that would be damaging to the industry, and also with the understanding that the tariff was going to take longer to be implemented, net metering was extended through the end of next calendar year and is not tied to the end of RSIP. So just wanted to make sure you're all aware of that. Next slide. So this is our status, and the note here at the bottom shows that this was the status as of September 1, 2020. However, I'm going to explain how we're at about the same number as of today. So we're at about 342 megawatts of approved projects, or about 98% of the target in terms of approvals. As of today, the approved capacity is still about the same, given that we've had some cancellations as well as some new submissions since September 1st. So you can see we're less than 10 megawatts away from the target. Now, in terms of reaching the statutory target of deployed projects, we're at about 303 megawatts, or 90% of the target. So technically, RSIP doesn't end until we reach 350 megawatts of deployed projects. We just wanted to mention here a couple of the statistics for the program. Program-wide, about 25% of systems are homeowner-owned, and about 75% are third-party owned through a lease or PPA. And then everyone should be proud of the fact that we have enabled total investment of 1.3 billion in residential solar, about 150 million provided by way of the RSIP incentives, and the rest borne by customers or the private sector. So that's nearly a 9-to-1 leverage ratio of private to public dollars. It's an extremely efficient program. So in summary, we're less than 10 megawatts away from reaching the 350 megawatt target. We're estimating reaching 350 megawatts of approved projects as early as October, given that we're averaging about 5 to 6 megawatts of approvals per month. So what we have at the top there, 2 to 3 months, we probably should have updated that to closer to 2 months in terms of 350 megawatts of approved projects. However, because we all know that projects drop out due to expirations or cancellations for various reasons, we will ultimately need to approve additional projects to reach 350 megawatts deployed. And that's a little bit of a tricky process. And so that's what we want to go over with you today, is how we're going to handle that closeout process to try to ultimately reach 350 megawatts of deployed projects without, over-promising incentives where we may not be able to do that.
Great. And Celia, let me pick up from here just in terms of, because I'm sure a number of the contractors are wondering if there's a possibility of extending the RSIP. So, just so you know, as we've been watching and tracking the impacts of COVID-19, we've been feeling more and more like the policy goal of sustained orderly development isn't going to be met, because we're kind of limping. You all are kind of limping into the 350 megawatt goal, and it feels unstable to us. So we've made a number of cases to the legislative leaders and administrative leaders on extending the RSIP. We don't know what the status of all that is, but we do know that it's important to stabilize your industry, that we get more runway, and especially given some of the recent focus, right, on the rate increases in the storm response. We all know that solar PV is good in terms of reducing electric rates to those participating and improving the reliability of the grid by deploying more solar. So in addition to that, kind of those legislative efforts, and you guys should, working directly with your local legislative leaders through your local associations, however you feel appropriate, work to communicate that to your respective legislative leaders. We will do it through our channels, as we have been doing. But beyond that, we're also exploring other regulatory solutions at PURA in New Britain, the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority. We put in a number of considerations. We don't know what the status will be for those considerations, but we're simply trying to get other options on the table for some way of extending the RSIP. And we'll know more, hopefully in the coming months, about whether or not those options can be acted on. So I think that's it. So unless you wanted to add anything else on the status of the RSIP, we could move to the closeout.
That sounds good. Let's go to the closeout process. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Celia. So we're just going to go over a couple of slides here on how we're planning to close out the RSIP over the next couple of months, as Celia just indicated. Really the first and most important thing here, kind of the overarching subject, is that it's very important to communicate with your customers as of right now that they're not necessarily guaranteed an incentive. So as we get closer, that likelihood of not getting an incentive will possibly increase. So we will follow up with a communication with some more detailed information about how this whole closeout process will work. But for now, we're just going to kind of go over some of the high level and the things that are most relevant for the next couple of weeks. So as we approached the 300 megawatt last year, which was our previous target, we implemented a way to track the order of the incentive application submissions in PowerClerk. So you may have noticed that the RSIP ticket number, RTN field, is showing up in new applications since last year. So we're actually, well into the 10,000 or so of that RSIP ticket number. But at that time, we were expecting RSIP to end at 300. So we're just going to pick up kind of where we left off with the 350 and start using it the way that it was originally intended now. The RTN field, as you know, is blank when you're first editing your application. It only fills in a number upon entering the submitted via internet status. The RTN number is your place in line. So it's it changes, or it can change, unlike the RPV number. The RPV number never changes once you submit an app. If you change statuses, if you get rejected, resubmit, it'll always stay the same, the RPV number. But the RTN number can change depending on how many times you have to submit. So as we come a little closer to the 350 megawatt target, plus a few megawatts, we will soon only review projects in order of RTN. So it'll make things a little bit more complicated for us to have to review kind of different types of applications in the order that they're received, instead of batching them like we do now. But it's really the best way to ensure that it's fair for everyone, that your place in line is where you get to be reviewed. We will have a policy of, similar to when we're ending an incentive step, that if you get rejected for a small reason, not anything major, but just something like a minor correction that needs to be made, we will give you 3 business days. So we'll put it in a special status called application rejected 3-day. And you'll have 3 business days, which includes, it's just Monday through Friday minus weekends and holidays, to correct errors and resubmit without losing your ticket number. So if you're 5th in line and we review you today, we reject it, you'll have 3 days to resubmit it. And then assuming that, we've gone through the list, you will be next in line when you resubmit. Ticket numbers cannot and will not be manually edited. So you certainly won't have access to do that as applicants. We won't have access to do that as admins or program designers. So to just kind of recap this, the RPV number will never change once it's assigned, and the RTN number will be lost if the application is not submitted within 3 business days. If you wait more than 3 business days, then a new RTN number will be generated and you will be at the end of the line. So we will, the process of assigning the RTN is completely automated. We won't edit them, and correct submissions, as you know, will save you time and potentially save your customers incentive. One additional thing is that we will regularly post the submitted queue minus customer details. So we'll just have the RPV number, the RTN number, and probably the system size posted in a list, likely an Excel document on the PowerClerk homepage. So at any time, if you know that your RTN number is 2010 or 2025, whatever the number is, you can go and you can download that list on PowerClerk, and you can see where you sit in line. So you can kind of get a better idea to know yourself and to tell your customers, of the likelihood of being approved. So you can kind of do the math between how many megawatts are ahead of you, how many megawatts are left in RSIP, and then just kind of determine your probability. So for those of you who may want to see this visually, we just made a couple of quick infographics here. So as an example, here's a quick approval, something that's right the first time. So we have the contractor on the left, Green Bank on the right. So you would submit a project. We will have a new process where an automated email will go out after your submission, and that will tell you, here's your RTN number, here's your RPV number, and here's where you can find the information on the RTN list. And at that point, we'll review it in the order of RTN and then move to approved status if it's approved. So the additional step of the automated email is really just to kind of set expectations for you and the customer that, you may have to wait, make sure you don't install it first, and just know that there may be a little bit longer wait time because of the way that we're reviewing apps now. incomplete submissions, as I said before. So we have the ability and we reserve the right to determine in our sole discretion what constitutes a complete or incomplete application. So if we see an application come in that's, basically just kind of junk, it's, wrong customer info, the contract isn't signed, info isn't really put in there, it's essentially just thrown in there to reserve a place in line, that will be rejected first pass, and you will have to get a new RTN number when you resubmit. So we won't give any 3-day rejections for anyone who isn't clearly making an effort to submit a complete application. Minor corrections for things like a couple numbers being off or something being unclear, that's normal. That would get the 3-day. So here's what it would look like if you had the 3-day. So I eliminated the first couple steps of it being submitted and reviewed. But as you can see here, we would reject it, put it in the 3-day status and send the letter. As long as those corrections were made as requested and submitted within 3 business days, you'll get another submission number when you, another submission email when you resubmit it. It will have the same RTN number that you had before, and we would review it in order when we receive it, and it would be at the top of the list. And then at that point, we would approve it. And then the most complicated would be if a project was rejected, put in the 3-day status, and then it was not corrected in 3 business days, or they didn't make the corrections as requested. We would then put it into application rejected status, which is an automated process. And then at that point, it would erase your current RTN number, and then you would get a new one when you resubmit, and you would be at the bottom of the list, which as we approach the 350, the likelihood of actually getting an incentive would go down. So again, really just trying to drive home here. So after we reach the 350 megawatt target, or the target that we set with any bit of overage, so maybe 355 megawatts, we will have a contingent approval process where we have already reached our capacity, but we will continue to review projects in the process that I just described on the previous slides. So going through by RTN number in order, and assuming that everything's okay and okay to approve, we would issue a contingent approval. So similar to your contingent approval from the utility, you would not be able to install or really proceed until you've received a full approval. But the contingent just says you're in line. We would approve this if we could, and pending any other project being canceled or expiring, you will be in line to receive a full approval if something opens up. And then just here's that visually about how we will issue the contingent approval and verify whether we have enough canceled capacity in RSIP to go ahead and approve the next project. So with that, I'll pass it over to Sarah now, who can go over a little bit more about the RSIP closeout process.
All right, I'm gonna cover maybe everyone's least favorite topics, expirations and cancellations. So on 9/1, we did resume automatic cancellations for projects that have reached 270 days or more and are technically expired. Those cancellations, the auto cancels, will continue through the end of RSIP from here on out. We are going to, we realize maybe that we should send out some additional information. So we're going to send out communications at 60 days, 30 days, 7 days, and 1 day before the cancellation. I believe it was only 30, so that will start 9/15. If you know a project is going to be canceled or is not gonna be installed at all, we do have a process guide on the PowerClerk homepage on how to cancel that project yourself in PowerClerk. And this is very important because it will help to free up capacity in the program and help us figure out, what's left in RSIP. Next slide, please. The good news is we are going to consider extension requests for projects that are already installed and only waiting on completion paperwork. This is at the Green Bank's sole discretion, and we are going to implement a new status and form to request these extensions in PowerClerk. So more information will be available on that soon. But just a reminder that extension approvals are not guaranteed. Next slide.
Hey, Sarah, I just wanted to jump in. I just got a note from someone that she could not hear the audio. If anyone on the line or any attendee, if you can't hear or if you have an issue, send it in through the questions or the chat, just so we can know. So if anyone else has any issues, let us know. Otherwise, I think it might have just been that one person.
Okay. Okay, so we are going to have to sort of whittle down the expiration time frame from 270 days to 180 days. This is going to go into effect for any project approved after September 15th. That will be reflected in the RSIP reservation incentive letter that goes out as well. Next slide, please. And back to Celia and Brian.
All right. All right. Thank you, Sarah and Ed, for that comprehensive closeout. Again, we'll provide these slides, we'll provide the webinar, and if you have questions, put them in the chat. We're going to go a little longer than 11:30 for those who want to hang out on the webinar. So just transitioning a little bit here to future market opportunities, Celia and I wanted to talk about the Equitable Modern Grid docket, which is docket number 171203. That's at PURA. There are 11 different reopeners, from things like energy affordability to zero emission vehicles to battery storage, which is reopener number 3. We have always felt, as I'm sure all of you do, that the future of the solar PV market is combining solar PV with battery storage so that we can ensure that participating households not only have backup power in the event that you see what we've been seeing, storm outages on the electric grid, but also that the benefits of those solar PV systems can help ratepayers and the grid improve its reliability. So the Green Bank and a number of partners, which we'll talk about in a second, brought forward what we just tentatively called Solarize storage. We wanted to give some pizzazz to our proposal title, but this is essentially a proposal that would seek to deploy 50 megawatts of battery storage in combination with existing or new residential solar PV by the end of 2025. So I think we estimated 10,000 homes here, and we're going to go into some more detail in terms of our structure in a second. Let's go to the next slide. So in terms of the design of the program, we used a number of different sources to really create a best practice design. And I feel, having reviewed all the proposals in the docket, that this proposal is by far the most comprehensive, the most effective, and most efficient look at how to do this in the residential solar market. And I want to thank, all the TPOs out there who put in their proposals and support. So we looked at industry research. There's a number of things out there, from things like the Energy Storage Association, their research reports on looking at various state designs. We had a number of conversations with many of you, either directly or indirectly through Solar Connecticut, in terms of what you all were seeing in the field and what you believe is needed in the market. We actually conducted, and some of you may have seen this, some willingness to pay surveys. So we actually went out to 20,000 RSIP customers and Smart eLoan customers. We got 1,900 responses, and it was a survey that took about 15 minutes. We gave $10 certificates to the first 300 respondents to Dunkin' Donuts. So we got really good data. And if you all haven't seen it, Ed, why don't we flag it as including in our response so that they can see the research results. It's great. It's really extensive. So we want to share that with you all. We also took a look at regional best practice programs. We wanted to understand the upfront and performance-based incentives that are being offered in northeastern states on battery storage in combination with behind-the-meter storage. And we also developed a benefit cost calculator. Working with Guidehouse, our consultant, we developed a really comprehensive tool that allows us to look at what those incentives do in terms of things like performance cost test, participant cost test, total resource cost test, ratepayer impact test, societal cost test, and the like. These are all what are called cost effectiveness tests, assuming the benefits exceed the costs or benefits are greater than one. What you see here then is those programs should be supported. And we saw with our program design extensive benefits to all ratepayers and society from doing the program. Next slide. Celia, why don't I turn it to you to kind of talk about our collaborative partners on the proposal.
Great, thanks, Brian. So shown on this slide are some of the many collaborative partners that we worked with on the proposal to PURA, and also partners that provided a support letter for the proposal, including contractors, third-party owners, and battery storage technology providers. We also appreciate other contractors that we've had many conversations with that provided your time and knowledge to help us improve the program design for the industry. And we'll likely reach out for further input as we get an opportunity to flesh the program design out further. Thank you for that. Next slide.
Hey, Celia, before we move on, can we hang out on that slide? I just wanted to make one more point on this if I could, which was that we made a strong effort to ensure that the program design we put forward also included our utility partners through the Conservation and Load Management Fund. They administer those funds. So we included both Avangrid and Eversource as administering a performance-based incentive. We believe that the Green Bank, you all are doing an exceptional job on the upfront incentives. So we designed that as a way to get customer acquisition and be a catalyst to getting customers to want to do battery storage. We added in the utilities on the performance-based side so that we can keep those customers, as Celia will talk through specifically, to dispatching their battery systems when the grid needs it the most. So I just wanted to make that point that we made a very active effort to involve the utilities in our proposal.
Thank you, Brian. That's a really important point because, as many of you know, there are some programs out there already. For example, Eversource has a Connected Solutions program in Massachusetts and just started one in Connecticut. So we did have conversations with the utilities to make sure we were factoring in what they were going to be proposing so that our program design would be supplementary and provide the best possible combined economic benefits for helping encourage adoption of storage. So next slide. So this is a diagram of what's called operational control design for the proposal. Essentially, we are proposing a program design that incorporates both an upfront incentive from the Green Bank as well as an ongoing performance-based incentive from the utilities. And in exchange for providing the upfront incentive, the Green Bank would require that customers allow their battery to participate in, you could call it passive dispatch, or we also sometimes call it set it and forget it. So that battery would be set to dispatch on a regular basis, for example, during ISO New England summer peak hours. and that would provide a baseline of benefit to the grid. In addition, those same batteries, if they would like to also benefit from the additional performance-based incentive from the utilities, would be agreeing to participate in active dispatch, which means that the utilities could send a signal, usually a day ahead, that that battery would be needed during a scheduled time to dispatch, usually the next day. And in that case, that would override the default set it and forget it dispatch. And so that day where there's a scheduled event from the utilities, the battery would just dispatch to satisfy that event and be able to get benefits from the utility demand response program. Next slide, unless Brian, you have anything to add?
There might be a motion on this slide. Go ahead and click once, Ed. Showing the technical. You can walk through that cell.
Great. Okay, thank you. So this is an interesting diagram showing how the battery charges and then dispatches. And of course, it's charging from the solar earlier in the day, and then the battery has enough capacity to dispatch to meet on-site load for the green bank's set it and forget it or passive demand response requirement. And then as we mentioned, there are going to be some days where the utilities will send a signal, and that's the bar here where it says event day is called, where that battery will be asked to provide active dispatch in response to that scheduled event. Now notice that what this graph is trying to illustrate is that there are benefits to the grid from the passive dispatch that's going to be happening by default, but the active dispatch event is going to allow for even additional incremental benefits over and above that default dispatch, because when the utility calls an event, not only can the battery dispatch to meet on-site load, but it can also export to the grid. So the analysis that was done by our partner Guidehouse showed that additional benefit could be provided to the grid. And that's important because we need to show a certain benefit cost ratio, as Brian alluded to earlier, in order to argue for the fact that these programs can provide benefits, and therefore we can justify the cost to the state and to ratepayers for providing these incentives.
Perfect. Next slide. So this is just kind of the last slide that puts forward, you know, we all have learned a lot about the importance of a declining incentive block structure in terms of supporting your companies and helping onboard customers. So we laid out a 50 megawatt incentive structure by step. Again, as I had noted before, we think that this would reach at least 10,000 or somewhere around 10,000 households. As Celia was stating there, for the set it and forget it, the upfront incentive that the Green Bank would provide, and we've got two of them, one for non-low to moderate income incentive customers and others for low to moderate income customers. We want to make sure that we're making vulnerable communities more resilient. So we've provided an additional incentive there. So for getting that upfront incentive, you would follow the set it and forget it protocol that Celia laid out. And then if you wanted to participate in the ongoing performance-based incentive, allowing the utilities to access that system and actively dispatch that system, there's an ongoing performance-based incentive, and we modeled Massachusetts incentive over a 10-year period. So Celia, I don't know if you want to give more context in terms of what that might look like for a project or anything else, but this is all to say that this structure that you're seeing here would pass all the cost effectiveness tests that we were alluding to earlier and deliver more value to ratepayers and society than we're currently getting from just deploying behind the meter residential solar.
Thank you, Brian. I think just the overarching goal is we wanted to provide an upfront incentive in addition to the performance-based incentive to help buy down that upfront cost for the battery storage and help that customer meet the cost of that battery as much as possible over, say, a 10-year lifetime for the battery.
Excellent. All right. I think we're on to now the Smarty loan, and I think we're going to transition here to Joe B, if I'm not mistaken. Next slide, Ed.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's good to speak with you all. So Brian and Celia, thank you for the great overview of the proposed battery storage incentive. I'm happy to report that we actually have a battery storage special offer through the Smarty loan that I'll introduce in just a bit, and that's available right now. So a good tool to hopefully for your company to take advantage of and to offer to your customers. Before I talk about that though, just a quick refresher on what the Smarty loan is. It's the residential financing program that's administered by the Connecticut Green Bank in partnership with 9 local lenders, so banks and credit unions all across the state. Really the key points about Smarty are the flexibility of what can be financed: solar, battery storage, EV chargers, heat pumps, windows insulation. It really runs the gamut of anything that can save your customer on their fuel or electric bills. There's no money down required with Smarty. There are fixed monthly payments and no prepayment penalty. So this is a great program to take advantage of. It's an unsecured personal loan, so no lien is put on the property and no collateral is needed. With flexible underwriting criteria, so borrowers with as low as a 580 credit score and a 50% debt to income maximum could potentially qualify for the loan. So if you have any questions, if your company needs a refresher on Smarty or wants to join Smarty as an eligible contractor, please reach out to me. You'll have my contact information on the final slide. Ed, if you can go on to the next slide, please. The next slide is talking specifically about the battery storage special offer. And as mentioned, it's available right now. It launched on July 1st of this year, along with a special offer for both heat pump technologies, air source, ground source, and heat pump water heaters, along with electric vehicle charging stations. And what the special offer is it's a 2.99% interest rate for 5, 7, or 10-year loan terms. And it's specific to battery storage. And it's capped at $25,000, whereas the Smarty loan in general is capped at $40,000. So the way that works to allow for homeowners who either want to finance a battery in a battery that might exceed $25,000 or a battery and solar, we do allow for a blended rate. And just a note from that first bullet point is that this offer is available for battery storage installations paired with solar PV or a retrofit, adding a battery to an existing system. So where the blended rate comes in is in the idea of either a battery that might exceed the $25,000 2.99 cap or a battery paired with solar or another measure. And so the way that blended rate would work is that the battery would qualify at the 2.99% rate. The additional battery cost or the solar or whatever the other measure is above $25,000 would qualify at the standard Smarty rate. So using an example of a 10-year term, the standard rate is 5.99%. So with that loan, the 2.99 for the battery, the 5.99 for the other measure, the loan would close at a 5.13% interest rate for the $35,000 loan at 10 years. So it would close below the standard rate of 5.99. We have a handy calculator that we can share with you just to help you run the numbers of what those costs might be, but a great opportunity for your customers to either add a battery to their existing system or to install new solar and storage systems at below market rates for an unsecured loan. For more details on how to get started with the battery storage special offer, I'd refer you all to the PowerClerk login page. We have a comprehensive RFQ and program guidelines form for you to review, as well as a customer terms and conditions document there. And then just for final reference, with the value of the interest rate buy down or IRB for that $10,000 battery loan at 10 years is about a $1,300 cost, and that's the cost that we would cover to help buy down that incentive. We anticipate the 2.99 offer to be in the market likely through the fall, but we would announce within at least 30 days before the offer ends. So any questions, please reach out to us. With that, I'll turn it back over to the team. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. So with that, we're going to go into a few important RSIP reminders, but after that, we're going to go over questions. So I think we'll just kind of run through the reminders quickly. And if you have questions, please start submitting them now in the questions panel, and then we will filter and go through them after the next slide. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Sarah just for a couple of quick RSIP reminders.
Thanks, Ed. And these slides will be available after the webinar, so we can just go through them pretty quickly. Just a gentle reminder to please double check applications before submitting, either upfront or on the back end. This is really important as we reach the 350 to avoid losing place in line. And then don't fret if you receive a 3-day rejection notification on a Friday. It is business days. So we'll go through a couple common errors on the upfront. Generally, it's paperwork that's uploaded doesn't match Power Clerk. It could be, missing information, cut off, blurry, incorrect. Shade report is not accounting for all of the shade obstructions. It might be outdated or inaccurate. Next slide, please. On the back end, on the completion submissions, some of the common errors are pretty similar. Maybe the document uploaded has the wrong information. Perhaps it's for the wrong homeowner. Just double checking things like that. Sometimes the equipment fields, if there was a change order, might need to be updated. So just double checking that. Self-inspection photos, it's hard for us to sort of verify array modules and things like that if the photos are very far away or blurry or missing. So having all of those clear, close up, and verifiable photos will help everyone save some time. Next slide, please. All right, some biggies. The approval to energize letter, common issues would be the utility inverter rating on the letter not matching up in Power Clerk, or maybe the actual approval to energize date doesn't match up. If the project is an addition, there's a few additional steps that need to be taken there, so we'll have some information there. And the same with battery storage. Projects that are not reporting in Locus, some of the common issues are the MAC ID might be incorrect, or if you're using a SolarEdge, SolarLog, or Enphase, perhaps the permissions haven't been provided to Greenbank. Next slide, please. And I'm gonna tap in Celia for the payment slide.
Thank you, Sarah. So this is just a reminder that for payments, the data monitoring must be up and running in the Locus platform, not just in the original platform like Enphase, SolarEdge, or SolarLog. So we need to be able to see the data in Locus in order to issue the payment. And then just a reminder that if you want to get the project, if you want to get the site built in Locus before you have all the completion paperwork, you can use the PDP submitted status, and there's a guide on the Power Clerk login page for that. And then lastly, if you have any questions regarding inspections, please contact Bill Colonis, and his email address is provided there.
All right, and so with that, we will get into the questions. So we're gonna spend probably 5, maybe 10 minutes to wrap up the questions here. Let's see. Just a moment while I filter through these. So first question, if someone auto cancels and the customer still wants to move forward, can we resubmit? Quick answer is yes. However, depending on when you catch it, you may actually have to submit a new application and get a new RTN number, and you would go to the back of the line. So make sure that you pay attention to those auto emails that will go out that will remind you of a project's impending expiration of the deadline for the 270 or soon to be 180 deadline, 180-day deadline.
Thanks, Ed. And this is Sally. I just wanted to add, and as Sarah mentioned, we're going to have an extension requested status, and you'll be able to submit that into Power Clerk if you want to request an extension before a project gets auto canceled. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. And we're hoping to have all these changes to Power Clerk. So like Celia said, the extension requested, a couple other things about the auto generated emails to go out starting September 15th, which is this coming Tuesday, so a couple days from now. Next question is, what about the proposed 100 megawatt extension? Is that something that you think is likely, or where is the Green Bank on making efforts for that? I think it's a question for Brian.
Great. So thank you for that question. Yeah, if you all were listening into the Energy and Technology Committee hearing earlier this week on LCO 3920, you clearly heard from the Energy and Technology Committee chairs that both the RSIP and virtual net metering extensions are priorities for them. But right now they are dealing with the rates and storm response to Isaias as the priority. So they know where we are on the 350. It's a priority. You know, there's no telling what they're going to do in a special session. You all need to be out there advocating for the extension. We're doing what we can to advocate for that extension as well. So they're just trying to manage bigger priorities given the ratepayer impacts and, you know, from both the rates and the tropical storm. So we need your help too.
This next question, I believe, is it's either for Celia or for Joe, depending on the nature of the question, but it was, can you clarify that the only battery equipment from the collaborative partners will be accepted? So I think that means, is there a list of eligible equipment for, I think, for the Smarty battery, and then also for a proposed RSIP battery program?
I can take that. Thanks, Ed. So for the Smarty, I just wanted to remind everyone the details for that are in a program guidelines document on the Power Clerk login page. And it does specify that if a contractor wants to participate in that special offer for battery storage, we're asking you to submit to us what equipment you're planning to use for those projects, and we will review that and approve it if it's reasonable. If it's a battery technology that's not yet commercial, that's an example of a type of equipment that we would not approve. So we will be creating a list as those come in and are requested. But a lot of the standard battery technologies that are out there now that are commonly being used and are commercially available will be acceptable for Smarty. And it will be similar for the battery storage incentive program. We're certainly going to have a lot of the common commercially available technologies that are acceptable for use in that program, but you'll also be able to propose additional technologies that aren't on that list. So we're trying to be technology agnostic and keep that open for participation. We want to encourage as many technology providers to participate. And so we will review those as they come in, just to make sure that they meet the minimal criteria of the program. And also, just so you know, the program design for the proposal that we submitted to PURA, we have that proposal available on the Connecticut Green Bank website. If you'd like to look at that in detail, just go to the Connecticut Green Bank page, and under strategy and impact, if you go to planning, it's under there, and it's called PURA Docket Solarize Storage Proposal, or reach out to us and ask us if you need the link. Thank you.
Thanks, Celia. Couple of questions about auto cancellations. So can it be switched back to approved status in order to request an extension? The short answer for right now is yes, we are doing that for some projects, or well, for anyone who asks right now, for projects that get auto canceled due to expiration, just because this is kind of a new thing. People aren't used to it, but we will fine tune this policy a little bit over the next couple of weeks. So we'll have some more official guidance as to what we will and will not accept as it gets to be more significant related to, you know, customers' ability to actually get the RSIP. So just sit tight on that one. Next question, I think this is for Celia. In your talks with Avangrid, are they expecting to join in on the Connected Solutions program like Eversource?
Actually, I think Brian might be better able to answer that question.
So I think this gets back to the broader point of that these are proposals that have been brought forth to PURA underneath reopener number 3. So PURA is going to open, I suspect, hearings and comments on the different proposals, which is, I guess, what we would call out to you all as if you all can express support for that and help us through that process, that would be great. I suspect PURA will take up the conversation on this performance-based incentive. You know, is replicating Massachusetts performance-based incentive the right way to go? If so, then should Avangrid follow that protocol? If not, then what should we be looking at? And I think what they're going to look at is the cost-benefit calculation. You know, the participant cost test, the program administrator cost test, some of those things I was talking about. There's a calculator behind that. So I suspect they're going to want to look at what would happen if you offered this type of incentive versus that type of incentive to make sure that ratepayers are maximizing their benefits from the program. So I guess that's a way of saying to be determined, but our point was that we wanted to see the utilities included in our proposal so that they can offer an ongoing performance-based incentive.
Thanks, Brian. So I'm just gonna grab one last one because it's quick. Does the 3-day business or the 3 business day deadline start on 9/15? Yes, it does. So Tuesday the 15th is when we'll be rolling out or hoping to roll out all the changes that we discussed. So reviewing an RTN number order, having the 3-day auto cancellation or 3-day automatic loss of the RTN number if you get rejected. So again, as these things roll out, we'll have a little bit more guidance, email notifications, and maybe sort of a process guide for all these new changes. So just kind of being mindful of everyone's time here because we are about 25 minutes over. We will go through any additional questions through the email when we send it out with the recording and the presentation sometime next week. So in the meantime, if anybody else has any additional questions, you can feel free to email them to us. We have our emails on the screen here. The smallsolar@ctgreenbank.com is probably the best way to reach all of us. So with that, if any of the panelists don't have anything else to add, just wanted to thank everyone for joining us today, and we will be in touch next week with some more details about the webinar and questions and a copy of the presentation. So thanks, everyone.